I wish I had left when Marcus did. He stopped by my desk at exactly 6:47 p.m., coat already on, keys already in his hand, and he said, "Daniela, go home. The report can wait until morning." I told him I was almost done. I smiled and waved him off. He hesitated at the door for a second longer than felt normal, like he wanted to say something else, and then he left. That hesitation, I have thought about it 1,000 times since that night. I keep wondering if he knew something, if everyone knew something, if I was the only one who didn't. This happened 3 years ago in Portland, Oregon. I was 26 years old. I was a junior data analyst at a mid-sized logistics company called Meridian Group. We had the 4th and 5th floors of a gray office building on SW 5th Avenue. Nothing special about the building, nothing unusual about the job. I had worked there for 14 months and stayed late plenty of times before. The building had security, it had cameras, it had a front desk guard named Phil who made terrible coffee and always offered you a cup anyway. Nothing about that place had ever scared me, until the night I stayed alone. It was a Thursday in November, one of those Pacific Northwest evenings where the sky goes dark by 4 p.m. and the rain doesn't fall so much as it hangs in the air, like a cold, wet curtain pressed against every window. The kind of night that makes you want to go home, make tea, and sit under a blanket. The kind of night you are not supposed to stay in an empty office building alone. But I had a deadline. Our regional director, a stiff man named Garrett who communicated almost entirely through passive-aggressive emails, had moved up the quarterly logistics report by an entire week without warning. It was due by 9 a.m. Friday. I had been in meetings all day and had barely touched it. By 6 p.m., when people started shutting down their computers and pulling on their jackets, I had maybe 30% done. I remember being annoyed, but not anxious, just tired and a little frustrated. This was normal. Deadlines were normal. Staying late was normal. Marcus left at 6:47. Our colleague Priya had left at 6:30, with a quick "good luck" over her shoulder. By 7 p.m., the entire 4th floor was empty, except for me. I put on my headphones, I opened my spreadsheets, I started working. For the first hour, everything was fine. The 4th floor had an open plan layout in the center, with private offices running along the far wall and a long corridor on the left side that connected to the stairwell, the bathrooms, the copy room, and a small kitchen. The lights in the open area stayed on when people were present, but the corridor lights were on motion sensors. They'd go dark if nothing moved there for about 3 minutes. Around 8 p.m., I got up to make coffee in the kitchen. I walked down the corridor, the lights clicking on ahead of me one by one, that familiar buzzing flicker. I made my coffee, stood there for a moment looking out the small kitchen window at the wet, dark street below. The city was still alive down there, cars moving, a few umbrellas dotting the sidewalk, life continuing without me. I went back to my desk. That was the last completely normal moments of that night. At around 8:40 p.m., I heard footsteps. Not running, not loud, just slow, steady footsteps coming from the corridor to my left. I took off my headphones and listened. Silence. I told myself it was the building settling. Old buildings make noise. I had been in offices before and heard things that turned out to be nothing. The HVAC system, a pipe, the floor contracting in the cold. I put my headphones back on. 12 minutes later, I heard it again. This time, I didn't put my headphones back on. I sat there at my desk very still, and I listened. The footsteps had that specific quality of someone walking carefully, deliberately, trying not to make too much noise, not the random creaking of a building settling. This was rhythmic. This had pattern. This had weight. I told myself it was the security guard. Phil did rounds. Of course he did rounds. I had just never been here late enough to hear them before. I stood up, walked to the entrance of the corridor, and looked down it. The lights were off, which meant nothing had moved there for at least 3 minutes. If Phil had just walked through, the lights would still be on. I stood there at the entrance of that dark corridor for a moment and felt the first real finger of unease trace itself up the back of my neck. "Hello?" I called. Nothing. The corridor stayed dark. I went back to my desk and told myself to stop being dramatic. At around 9:15 p.m., I noticed the first door. The private offices along the far wall were all closed when I had been in the bathroom earlier. I knew this because I had walked past them. All 6 doors closed. Most of the executives locked their offices at night. This was standard. But Office 4C, which belonged to our operations manager, Linda, was now open. Not wide open, just slightly, maybe 6 inches, enough to see darkness inside. I stared at it for a long time. Then I told myself Linda probably just left the door not completely shut when she left that evening, and it had drifted open on its own. Old doors do that, especially in buildings where the air pressure changes when the HVAC cycles on and off. I almost believed myself. I got up, walked over, and closed it firmly. I tried the handle. Locked. An unlocked door can drift open. A locked door cannot. I stood in front of Office 4C with my hands still on the handle and tried to reconstruct a logical explanation for what I was looking at. If the door was locked, it could not have drifted open. If it had been open before I noticed it, then either Linda left it unlocked and open, or someone had opened it. Or it had opened itself. I walked quickly back to my desk. My coffee had gone cold. I drank it anyway. I tried calling the front desk at 9:30 p.m. The rang 8 times. No answer. Phil always answered the desk phone. That was literally the job. I had called down to the desk before when I had forgotten my access card, and he picked up on the second ring every single time. I tried his direct line. It rang through to voicemail. I told myself he was probably doing a round of the building. Maybe he was on a different floor. I left a voicemail saying I was still on 4 and just checking in. He never called back. I texted Marcus, "Hey, is Phil usually hard to reach at night?" The message sat there with a single gray tick, undelivered. I was in a building surrounded by Portland on all sides, and my phone had full signal bars, but the message would not send. I tried Priya, same thing, single gray tick, undelivered. I tried calling my phone carrier's test number. The call went through. My phone was working perfectly. The messages just would not send to anyone I knew. I have never been able to explain that. At 9:52 p.m., my work computer turned itself on. I want to be precise about this because I know how it sounds. I had not been touching it. I had been reading through printed notes at my desk with my laptop, and my desktop monitor had gone dark the way it does when it hasn't been used. Standard screen timeout. But I had not logged out. I had not shut it down. The monitor lit up, bright, sudden. My email client was open. There was an email in my drafts folder that I had not written. The sender field was blank. The subject line was blank. The body of the email contained 3 words in the center of the page, in the default font, in the default size. "You should leave." I pushed back from the desk so fast my chair hit the cubicle behind me. I stood up with my heart slamming against my ribs and stared at that screen from 3 feet away. The words just sat there, plain, still, like they had always been there, like they were waiting for me to finally see them. I looked around the empty floor, the rows of dark, empty desks, the corridor to my left, dark again. The 6 office doors along the far wall, all closed. I looked back at the screen. "You should leave." My first thought, and I am almost embarrassed to admit this, was that it was a prank, that someone had set up some kind of automated message to spook whoever stayed late, that Marcus or Priya had done this before they left, and I was going to walk in tomorrow and they'd both be trying not to laugh. My second thought was that I did not believe my first thought at all. I deleted the email. I watched it disappear into the trash folder. I stared at the screen for another 10 seconds, and then I picked up my bag, put my laptop inside it, and told myself I was going to the bathroom, and then I was going to find Phil, and then I was going to decide whether or not to stay. The corridor lights came on as I walked down to the bathroom. I went in, splashed cold water on my face, looked at myself in the mirror. I looked scared. I hadn't realized until I saw my own face that I was scared. I had been managing the fear so carefully, rationalizing every single thing, that I hadn't let myself just feel it. I was scared. I was alone. Something was not right in this building. I dried my face. I pushed the bathroom door open. The corridor was dark again. I had been in the bathroom for less than 90 seconds. The motion sensor lights should have still been on. They stayed on for 3 minutes minimum. I had timed it before, once, out of boredom. The corridor was completely dark. The lights had gone off because nothing had moved in them, which meant nothing had moved in the corridor while I was in the bathroom. But I had heard something move right outside the bathroom door. The soft, unmistakable sound of weight shifting on tile floor. The kind of sound a person makes when they are trying to be quiet. I stood in the bathroom doorway with one hand on the doorframe, and I did not move. I could not see anything in that corridor. The only light was the faint yellow glow from the open plan office at the far end. Everything between me and that light was black. I took one step out. The corridor lights clicked on, and the corridor was empty. I made it back to the open floor, grabbed the rest of my things, and walked directly to the elevator. I was done. The report was not finished. Garrett was going to send a passive-aggressive email at 7 a.m., and I did not care. I was going home. I pressed the elevator button. The light above the elevator showed it was on the second floor. I watched the number change. 2, then 3, then 4. The elevator doors opened. It was empty. I got in, pressed G for the ground floor, and stood in the center of the elevator with my bag held in both hands and my eyes on the door as it slid closed. I watched the numbers count down. 4, 3, 2, 1, G. The elevator doors opened to the ground floor lobby. Phil was at his desk. His coffee mug was there. His jacket was draped over the back of his chair. The security monitors were on, showing camera feeds from around the building. His phone was on the desk. He was not there. I looked around the lobby. The front doors were right there, 20 feet away. I should have walked out. I should have been outside and down the street and into my car before I took another breath. Instead, I looked at the security monitors. I don't know why. Something made me look. Some part of my brain that I have never quite forgiven. There were 8 camera feeds in a grid on the monitor. Lobby, stairwells, parking garage, and 2 feeds from each office floor. I could see the 4th floor from above, the wide overhead camera angle that covered most of the open plan area. I could see my desk, the lamp I'd been working under still on, casting a warm circle of light, my empty chair pushed back from the desk, the printed notes I'd left on the surface. And I could see that for the entire time I had been sitting at that desk working, for the entire 3 hours I had been alone on that floor, there had been something standing in the shadow behind the row of cubicles to my left. Still, completely still, not moving, just standing there in the dark, 10 feet from where I had been sitting, watching me. It was tall. It was the shape of a person. But the way it stood, the angle of it, the complete lack of movement was not right. People shift their weight. People breathe. Whatever was in that shadow had not moved once in 3 hours of recorded footage. It was just standing there, watching. And as I stood at that desk staring at the monitor, the timestamp on the 4th floor camera feed continued running. 10:04 p.m., 10:04 p.m., 10:04 p.m., and in the feed, the shadow where the figure had been standing slowly turned toward the camera. I ran. I don't have a clean ending to give you. I wish I did. I got to my car. I drove home. I did not sleep. I called the building management company the next morning and reported that the security guard had been absent. The building management company said Phil had called in sick at 5 p.m. and a replacement guard had been sent over. The replacement guard reported nothing unusual. The building management company reviewed the security footage at my request. They said the 4th floor camera had a malfunction between 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. and had not recorded properly that evening. No footage existed from that time. Marcus came to my desk that Friday morning and asked if I was okay. I told him what had happened. He listened without interrupting, which was not like Marcus. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "You know, Priya said she felt weird in the building last month. She thought she heard someone in the stairwell when she stayed late. After that, none of us stay past 6 anymore." "Why didn't anyone tell me?" I asked. He looked at me with an expression I can't fully describe, uncomfortable, almost guilty. "We thought it was just nerves," he said. "We thought we were being silly." I left that job 4 months later, not only because of that night, but because of that night. I think about what I saw on that monitor sometimes, the shape and the shadow, how still it was, how long it had been there before I ever knew. And I think about this. Whatever it was, it had been 10 feet from me for 3 hours. It had been close enough to touch me. It had watched me work and worry and drink cold coffee and rationalize away every sign that something was wrong. It didn't do anything. It just watched. And somehow that is the part that stays with me the longest. Not the fear, not the running, but the quiet, patient stillness of something that was simply there, in the dark, for reasons I will never know. If you stay late at work tonight and the building gets quiet and you feel something you cannot explain, don't look behind you and don't wait as long as I did to leave.